Hi all, this is Sean from Time and Talk. So today I want to talk about Cartier. It's a brand that I've been becoming really interested in the last few weeks. I always thought that my thought was I was going to buy one more luxury watch, and then my collection, so to speak, was complete. And I always thought that it would be a Rolex, and I would either buy a Datejust or whatever, and that was it. But since Watches and Wonders, I've been thinking about Cartier, so I just wanted to make a video about it and talk through particularly their new Must collection, and also to have a think about a question which came up, and it's really relevant to Cartier, which is, should all watches be unisex? I'm not sure if anyone read it, but I was reading the article by Cara Barrett in Hodinkee, which talked about the same thing. Should we move away from labeling watches as either masculine or feminine or men's or women's? But anyway, so the Must collection. So the Cartier Tank originally was released in 1907, and basically the Cartier Must was released in the 70s as a way to get a new generation of people into the Tank. So it was, slightly more affordable. It had either a quartz or an ETA, I think, movement, and the price was better, and it was sterling silver plated with gold, and those are becoming actually more desirable now, and they're selling for more, as pretty much all watches are when people get a bit of knowledge about them. But this year at Watches and Wonders, Cartier re-released the Must version, obviously, or maybe not obviously. The Cartier Tank Solo was the previous entry, if you like, into the Tank, and now they've brought back the Must, so the Solo has been submerged, if you like, into that collection. So they released a few different watches this year in the Must collection. I'm not going to talk about the other ones, the Privé and things like that, just the Must, and then have a think about that question, and I'd love to hear your opinions on it, because I think it was interesting reading the Hodinkee article about gender and watches, and there was a lot of strong opinions about it, really. So the Cartier Must, so it was released this year, and originally I saw it and I thought, oh yeah, that's interesting. But over the last couple of weeks, I've been really thinking about these watches, and it's something a little bit different for me, because obviously the Tank is a dress watch, and it'd be kind of for a dress environment, a formal environment, if you like, or a more formal, smart environment. And I don't really have a watch like that, so it would fulfill that kind of role in my collection. Personally, I would really love a Cartier Tank Louis. They're precious metal gold in the main currently, and it's a quartz movement, or you can get a manual wind, but the manual wind yellow gold version is £11,000, so I don't think I'll be buying that anytime soon. And the Must, when it came out, I actually thought, wow, it actually looks like the Tank Louis, but it's in steel, or primarily in steel, and it's got a quartz movement, so it's much cheaper, and perhaps that would be a good option. So again, tell me what you think of this collection. But so first, what they did, they released a set of 3 new colours, which directly kind of follow a previous Must collection, I think from the 80s. I think they call them the monochromatic dials, and there are 3 colours. There's a green, there's a red, and there's a blue. So it's in steel. It's, I think, 33 or 34 lug to lug by about 24 millimeters, so really small for a man's watch, in quotation marks, in the modern world. And I think there's a smaller version as well, which I wouldn't buy that because it'd be too small for me. And I really like those. I think they're really interesting watches. They're a little bit funky, but nice watches, and would work kind of really well in a smarter environment. But I think the thing about the Tank, when you wear a smaller Tank, it just looks really interesting, I think, on some of these wrist. And I think particularly, obviously, because I'm a man and I look at other men's watches, I think if someone chooses a smaller watch, I think, wow, they've got some confidence to kind of pull that off, because a lot of people say, you know, really, really small watches are women's watches and things like that. And I do think that's an interesting thing, because I've got a small wrist and I like smaller watches, but I would be afraid to go below, not afraid, but you know what I mean, below a certain size, because I would worry that people would think it was a woman's watch, and maybe I shouldn't think like that. So those are the coloured dials of the Must, and then there's a steel, and it comes in 3 sizes, so you can get a small, a large, and an extra large. And the large is the dimensions that I just discussed, about 24 millimeters, 25 millimeters by about 33 millimeters. And then the extra large is, well, bigger. I'm not sure the exact dimensions. That's got an automatic movement, and the others are quartz. And I really like this watch, the steel kind of traditional tank, if you like, not one of the monochromatic ones. I just think it's a lovely looking watch. Over the Solo, it's more curvaceous, the case. I'll put pictures up on the screen so you can see it. And for me, it just looks like a really classic watch with a bit of character. And dare I say it, it's a classy watch to wear for kind of formal and smart occasions. A lot of people wouldn't like the quartz, but if you take the quartz Louis Cartier, which obviously is gold, at 9,000, and this, I think it's about 2,250. It looks like relatively good value. Obviously £2,000 for a quartz watch is a lot of money, but you know, you can't deny the history of Cartier, and this watch has existed since 1907, 2 years after Rolex. You know, this model has existed since then. Also, in this edition of the Must, in September, they're going to release a solar powered version. I think the movement's called the Solar Beat. And basically what happens is there are little holes in the dial in the Roman numerals where the light can pass through, and that's what powers the battery, or what powers the watch. And apparently, according to Cartier, they will last for 16 years. And you know, I think it's a relatively new thing in the luxury watch game. Obviously, you've got Citizen Eco Drive and things like that, but I think this is the first ever luxury watch with a solar powered movement. Correct me if I'm wrong. And also, the strap is made out of non-animal material, so it's not made out of leather. It's made out of recycled apple peels or something like that. And it's just a really cool thing for me, because pretentious as it sounds, you know, I kind of like that idea that you're buying into something that's not too harmful for the environment. And obviously I'm a consumer because I've got a watch channel, but you know, I think that's a really cool thing. And I read about the CEO of Cartier, who actually said, you know, he wants to be part of deconsumption, people making fewer purchases but making the right ones. And I thought that was really cool, because, you know, Cartier is the 3rd biggest Swiss watch company, and for them to say that, you know, you can buy a watch and keep it forever if you like, and this is going to last for 16 years before it needs a service, and I think that's really cool. The final part of the Must collection was the Louis Cartier. So they released the Louis Cartier with a dial that has already been released in the Must collection, I think in the 80s again, in solid gold, again in a quartz movement. I think they're about £11,000. Not for me really, I prefer the classic Louis Cartier. But tell me what you think of the Cartier Must collection, the new collection from Cartier. I think it's really cool, and I would really consider buying one. I think, you know, I would probably prefer if they produced a manual wind movement for maybe about, you know, 4,000 or 5,000, and it was an in-house movement. I know the Santos Dumont XL, they have that, but for £2,000, you know, you can't expect an amazing movement from a brand like Cartier. And I just think the design is fantastic and timeless. So again, tell me what you think. And onto that question on should all watches be genderless. I might make another video on this, but just as a finishing kind of thought, you know, what do you think about that question? Should we remove the labels of men's watches, women's watches? Because Cartier, I never really thought about it like this before, but Cartier is genderless, really. I mean, you see people wearing the small who are from both genders. You see people wearing the large from both genders, and you know, disregarding the really huge watches that would only work on a man's wrist. These watches are genderless, and you can choose the size to suit you. And also, what I find interesting about Cartier is that the XL, for example, the XL tank must, that would be too big for me. So I'm a man, so that watch is not for me. So, you know, I would have to go with one of the smaller watches, which are often marketed towards women. So in that sense, the idea of removing the gender from the watches, from the marketing, would be good for me, but it would also be good for the company. You know, it wouldn't make me feel a bit embarrassed to go to the shop and say, can I try on this watch, and someone tell me it's a woman's watch. In terms of that, it's really interesting the strong opinions that people had about the idea of whether a watch should be genderless or not, and got quite heated on the Hodinkee article. Check it out if you haven't already read it. And it's kind of, I guess it's old news now, but I do find it really interesting, and you know, how watch sizes have inflated over the past century. And back in the day, you would see men wearing 27mm, 24mm watches, but now that would be a woman's watch. And do we need to have those kind of stereotypes? And or to a certain extent, is it a good thing? You know, the idea that women wear a certain type of watch and men wear others. And we have to be honest, a lot of these watches that we love are marketed based on kind of manly, in quotation marks, pursuits, you know, like diving and things like that. Yeah, tell me what you think. It's just an interesting thought at the end of the video. So, thanks for watching the video. Tell me what you think of the Cartier Musk collection. I think it's brilliant, and thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.